Around this date 69 years ago, Williams Hearns committed the third crime in a series of burglary crimes in Chicago, Illinois. Taking place in 1945 to 1946, Hearns was just 17 years old and managed to murder 43-year-old Josephine Ross, 33-year-old Frances Brown, and young 6-year-old Susan Degnan. On June 5, 1945, Josephine Ross was stabbed when she awoke in her apartment to a thief stealing from her. She was found to have dark hairs clutched in her hand, likely from the killer, her wounds washed in the bathtub, 4 stab wounds in her throat, and her head wrapped in a skirt. No fingerprints or motive was evident. Just a few months later, on December 11th, Miss Frances Brown was shot and stabbed in her apartment with a message on the living room wall in her own lipstick. It read, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." Her body was washed and draped over the edge of the tub. It was determined that she had been shot in the head, then stabbed with a bread knife in the neck. Her head, too, was found wrapped in towels, and no evident fingerprints were left. Lastly, less than a month later, Suzanne Degnan was kidnapped, strangled, and dismembered on January 6, 1946. Her separated body parts were found in sewer openings near her home the weeks following the crime. Along with being dismembered in a laundry tub, police also found a crumpled ransom note in Suzanne's room saying to prep $20,000 in 5s and 10s and to not notify the police, but just wait for further word. While each kill appears rather random, the modus operandi shows that each murder was a female. The first 2 murders were in apartments on the north side of Chicago when the suspect broke in. However, at both scenes, nothing of value was missing. All were mutilated post-mortem and then put in tubs of some sort for cleaning. The killer had a tendency to go to the bathroom in each apartment and even taped adhesive tape over the gashes and covered their faces in clothing. Hearns was arrested on June 25, 1946, not for the murders, but instead for another burglary of his. Hearns pulled out a gun and was stopped only after 3 flower pots were dropped on his head by a nearby officer, knocking him unconscious. After 6 days of being tortured, starved, and denied a lawyer, as Hearns describes it, he finally admitted to an alter ego named George Merman that came out and killed each female. He doesn't remember this episode, but it was enough to lock him behind bars for life. Interestingly, police found bloody fingerprints smudged on the door jambs in the first 2 kills, enough of a match to place Hearns at the crime. It wasn't until August 7th that Hearns confessed to all murders. However, while in jail, he was the first prisoner in Illinois to earn a bachelor's degree in 1972. As well as helping other inmates earn their GEDs, he tried many times to get parole, but each time failed. He was the longest-serving inmate of U.S. prisons at the time. Now, let's move it over to Landis to see what he thinks about the motives of our killer, William Hearns.
Thanks, Marie. The lipstick killer was an unorganized killer. He didn't have a specific method of killing or age range. He just killed based on opportunities that provided themselves. The first of the victims, Josephine Ross, she had been stabbed to death in her apartment, and her head was wrapped in a dress. The second victim, Frances Brown, was stabbed and shot, with zero evidence saying it was premeditated. And the third victim, a 6-year-old girl, was dismembered and her body parts hidden in the sewers. All these random acts of violence prove that the lipstick killer was unorganized and didn't have specific motives. Back on the motive, it was never clear. He just killed based on opportunities that provided themselves. It's very probable that he killed victims that spotted him stealing from their homes. On the night that he was arrested, he was denied a lawyer and injected with sodium pentothal. The results were said to be inconclusive, but later evaluation of the interrogation said that Hearns was proved to be innocent. That, coupled with the fact that most of the witnesses state that the killer to be in his late 30s and a woman, have people questioning how authentic was the investigation. More evidence states that Hearns and the notes left by the killer were not in the same handwriting, and substantial evidence states that the fingerprint at the scene was placed by the police. There was also another suspect named Richard Thomas, who was a known sex offender and serial burglar. He molested his children and confessed to the crime, but was released from custody because they arrested Hearns. William Hearns was a troubled kid. with a bright future. He potentially spent his whole life in jail for no reason. Well, that's all we have for you today. Until next time, have a great night.